This podcast is a proud member of the Unidentified Network.
On the Track is a monthly web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
So what have we got exciting that's coming up in this episode, Mr. John?
Well, Hennis, in this week's exciting episode, we have another visit to the wonderful, weird and wacky world of Richard Freeman, who's going to talk for the second time about his new book, The Highest Strangeness.
I really like the old credits.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs, and welcome to another something odd's happening. What's going on over there? It looks like we've been magically transported to somewhere Brixton.
So, Rossiter, what's shaking down at the old Youth Outreach Centre down in Brixton? What plans you got for her?
Oh, Barry, I am going to be sending them on one of them, character building weekends that I send businessmen on and stuff like that.
You mean out in the country and stuff, doing activities?
Yeah, that's the sort of thing. We send them to a very remote place in the Highlands of Scotland with my friend Mr. Terry. He's a survivalist who has a personality disorder and he's very paranoid and he's got a big collection of guns and knives.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and welcome to another episode of On the Track. For those of you who don't know, On the Track is a show we do every Saturday afternoon at 3 and every Wednesday evening at 6:30, and it is full of a miscellany, a mishmash, a mixture, a montage. Lauren, tell me something that begins with M.
Mitochondria, of course.
I can work with that. Well done, dear. And it is all about hard science, weird shit, and surreality. And if you don't know what surreality is, I think you're going to have to go and ask him.
Surrealism is when you come home from the pub to find the Crankies and Pliny the Elder discussing Nina Mishkow's collection of taxidermied tapeworms.
So, ladies and gentlemen, on with the show, and I want to once again introduce you to my old friend, sparring partner, colleague, and sometime a housemate, the one and only Richard Freeman.
Then there was the case of a guy in rural Wisconsin who went to stop with his granddad in the early 70s, and his granddad was out hunting somewhere, and he was with his grandma, and she closed the curtain to the window, and she said, "Don't open the curtain, don't look out of the window." And I thought, I wonder why was she so adamant about that? And he sees this odd glow, and when his grandma's in the kitchen, he sneaks up and opens the window, and sees that these two glowing lights, one yellow, one pink, that are coming down the road. And as they get nearer and nearer, he says that they're two cows, one glowing pink and one glowing yellow, on their hind legs, looking like they're dancing, moving like that as they go past. His grandma comes in and freaks out that he's seen it. And when and tells him off when his granddad comes back, she tells him what's happened, and he goes out with his gun again looking for them but doesn't find them. What? Why?
That's got to be one, hasn't it? There can't be anything else like that.
Oh, as far as I know, that's a one-off.
It'd be lovely if you could do a whole show on dancing bipedal cattle. The glow.
Mm.
But the beginning of your story sounded, the glowing cattle story sounded like that one in, it's vaguely reminiscent of that one that's in McEwan's Mystery Animals in Britain and Ireland, about the thing that's it'll be a coming over the hill when it comes.
Oh, that's in it as well, yes. The creature from over the hill, where in the 1940s, it's from a book by Richard Cavendish called Evil, which is about the nature of evil and how our perception of it has evolved from, a couple of thousand years ago to today. And it's very, very interesting. And he said he knew this couple, and in the 1940s, they said, I think they were farmers, and the woman just one day stopped and said, "It'll come from over the hill when it comes." And her husband says, "What are you talking about?" She said, "What?" And she doesn't remember saying those words. And a few weeks later, they hear something, big heavy footsteps coming up to their farm, and the door opens. Something comes into the front room, and it's this great, fat, purple, yellow and green bloated thing with no neck, and a great belly and large earlobes and like little antennae and webbed claws. And it's sort of generating waves of evil, and they're terrified of it, and it just waddles through the room and waddles off again. And they never see it again, and there's no explanation.
You've told me some absolutely fabulous, in the proper sense of the word, stories. Have you attempted to make sense of all this surreal nonsense that makes no sense at all?
Yes, I've attempted. I've had a stab at doing this.
How on earth did you even approach the subject of trying to make sense of it?
You look for threads. You look for common threads that go through them. And you do find them. You find these common threads. Weird lights, that seems to be the base of it. That seems to be the base phenomenon, is a weird light phenomenon. And then there are noises as well. There are certain noises you hear repeated again and again, like something like a jack being wound up, or a bag of money being poured on the floor, or coins that is, or glass smashing and rocks falling. These noises are mentioned again and again and again, and there's generally a weird light somewhere within it. Intense fear, what Tony Healy and Paul Cropper call the nameless dread. And all of these things you'll find repeated. There are lots of weird stories where one phenomena sort of melts into the other. Like Tony Healy and Paul Cropper did a great book on Australian poltergeist cases, and there was a case from the 1930s in rural Australia, typical poltergeist activity, things being thrown around, heavy footsteps on the stairs, rocks being hurled, apports of rocks appearing in rooms and falling down. And then in the middle of it, the door bursts open and a yowie comes in, grabs a woman by the neck and tries to pull her off, drag her away into the night. And it only drops her when the guy comes running after her. And there are cases from America where you've got something that looks like Bigfoot haunting private houses, and in one case a brewery, where the night watchman keeps seeing this thing appearing and disappearing, and appearing behind them and appearing to walk through walls. You have demonic black dogs seen emerging from flying saucers in graveyards. You had you remember the famous case of the UFO abduction in Yorkshire of the policeman, PC Godfrey, I think his name was. But when he was supposedly taken onto the spaceship, not only did you see a Christ-like figure and with a beard in a robe, and these weird little robots with heads like light bulbs, he also saw a huge demonic black dog.
You know what this reminds me of?
Yeah.
Has anybody ever investigated the links between all this weird stuff and temporal lobe epilepsy?
That's one of the things I look at in the possible explanations.
That's my boy.
I go through all possible explanations for these things and say what cases I think may be involved in these, but that still leaves the vast majority unexplained by any rational explanation, because a lot of these things are multiple witness sightings.
Because when you talked about these things being heralded by specific noises, like the Clockwork Jack thing or breaking glass, that sounds very much like what's known as the aura in epileptiform seizures. It's something that people experience before they have the full-blown seizure. And the thing is about temporal lobe epilepsy is it's more to do with hallucinations than anything else, because it's right in the back bit of it's also known as Jacksonian epilepsy. It's right in the back bit of the brain. And I think that ties in with the theory that you and I had years ago about the fact that our brain can conjure up monsters that would have terrified our ancestors when our ancestors were little hairy geezers on the plains of East Africa.
The thing is, though, in a lot of cases, multiple people hear these sounds before the phenomenon manifests. The Epworth Priory haunting is one of them, where they heard this sound like money being poured on the floor or a jack turning, but all the members of the household and the servants hear it as well. And the interesting thing about Epworth Priory is, amongst all the other phenomena, which include a classic bedsheet type ghost, there's a strange little animal that looks like a headless badger, and they name the creature Old Jeffrey. And the times weird little animals turn up during hauntings is amazing, because of course you've got Jeff the Talking Mongoose, who's the most famous of them, but you've got other hauntings where funny little animals are seen as well.
The creatures under the bed.
Yes, I write about that as well, which was, now where was that? Was it Cheltenham? I can't remember now. But the woman writes into a magazine about her two daughters reporting these things that look like black horned toads with little forked tails that come hopping out from under the bed during the haunting. And then there was another haunting where a doctor and his family at the turn of the last century, were haunted by a creature that the children nicknamed Wolfie. And they said it looked like, and the doctor himself saw it as well, running along the corridors. He said it looked like a large hare standing on its hind legs, but it had short ears, and it ran around on its hind legs. Why? What's going on?
I wonder if somehow these are a collection of archetypes that fit into the human psyche in ways that we can't possibly understand. I don't know.
Well, God, I came up with the idea of the global monster archetype, the
Yeah.
global monster template, which has dragons, hairy giants, little people, monstrous dogs, monstrous cats, monstrous birds. They're the most commonly reported things.
But I wonder if there's another template of the weird shit monster template, of stuff that really is ludicrous.
But loads of them are one-offs. Loads of them are just weird one-offs that only get seen once.
Or only get reported once.
Yeah. And then you have the supposedly legendary creatures like dragons and werewolves and trolls being reported with surprising frequency and often alongside other phenomena. And I mean, as far back as the early 70s, F.W. Holliday was postulating ideas about that in The Dragon and the Disc, which I believe was published in 1975.
All I can say, ladies and gentlemen, is that
modern day fairy sightings. Loads of modern day. Loads of modern day fairy sightings, including the famous rabbit crushing goblin of Liverpool, Lee Walker's wonderful story from his youth about how the babies of his pet rabbit were found with their heads smashed in by something, and the final one was taken and put in a hutch in a locked shed, and his sister went to check on it, found the shed unlocked and the hutch open, and a creature in a monk's habit about 3 feet tall, with a great warty nose, pointed ears, bloodshot eyes and teeth and leathery brown skin, resembling a goblin, there ready to smash the rabbit with a hammer. And she runs hysterically back into the house and the whole family go out. There's no goblin, but there's a dead rabbit with a crushed skull.
Dear Lee Walker, I miss him.
Yes, I do miss Lee Walker. He was great.
He was a lovely guy.
And the mince pie Martians from Rowley Regis, which happened on my 9th birthday, January the 4th, 1979. Mrs. Jean Hegley and her dog, Hobo, were sitting in their living room shortly after Christmas. It was this was January. It was January the 4th. They still had their Christmas decorations up, and she says this craft lands in her garden. This is in an estate in Rowley Regis in the West Midlands. This craft appears about 7 o'clock in the morning with a scorpion-like tail on the back, and these little creatures come in through the door making a zee 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 noise, and they're wearing little space suits but pointed hats, and they have waxy faces and butterfly-like wings, and they flit around in her house, and they speak to her in English, and they're fascinated with the Christmas tree decorations, and she gives them mince pies, which they eat, but they refuse alcohol. And when she lights up a cigarette, they're terrified of the fire and flee back into their spaceship and fly away again. If they were aliens, why are they frightened of fire? There's another case like that from Cisco Grove in the USA, where a bow hunter was chased up a tree by these 2 supposed aliens wearing pointed hats and weird goggles that had a robot with them that vomited up this gas that made him queasy, and he was shooting down arrows at the robot with very little effect. It was vomiting up this gas that was making him feel lightheaded. But he said when he tried to frighten them away by setting fire to things and throwing the stuff down, they were afraid of the fire. And he said that the robot and the aliens moved backwards, but at the same time, the spaceship in the background moved backwards as well, as if they were all part of one bigger thing.
Only. I think if we understood this, we'd understand so much more about humanity and who and what we are.
Mm.
All I've got to say, Richard, we have 4 minutes left, and what I want to say is not to you, it's to the boys and girls out there in Watcherland. Because I want you all to go out and buy Richard's book. Not just because it sounds like it's an absolutely smashing book. In fact, I've read it. It is an absolute smashing book. Not just because you make Richard happy, but because I want to have the excuse to manage to get him to make a sequel. Because I want to read more of these unbelievable stories that just don't fit into any paradigm that one can possibly think of. So, please, go out and buy it. And I'm going to ask Richard your final word.
The world is a very, very, very much stranger place than we think it is. Reality is not what we think it is. It's more malleable. And yes, monsters do exist.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, says,
Don't forget to ring the notification bell, otherwise you'll miss the new episodes.
and that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it?
These might look like ordinary, everyday people, but they're not. Let's take a closer look. I'm filling my tomato harness with talcum powder on the moon. Back seats for keep a welcome in the hillside. Cherry ripe, cherry ripe. I live inside of a crab with Rip Van Winkle and the Patty Cake Man. Yes, they were all wazzocks. You can tell wazzocks by their general waz-tardedness. So remember, think once, think twice, think wazzock.
That was a public information film.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the end of another show. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to say a big thank you to my special guest this week, who has been the ever-delightful Richard Freeman. And I want to say a big thanks to all the people but for whom I wouldn't be able to carry on doing any of this stuff, really. Especially Graham Inglis, Deputy Director of the CFZ, and also my carer, which means he's the guy who pushes my wheelchair, makes sure I take my medicines on time, and takes me to and from the hospital. And I want to say a big thank you to the lovely Guinevere Palmer, who is the Assistant Director of this circus, and will be taking over the running of it as and when I go on to the next step of the journey. I'm going to be back on Wednesday, and I have no idea what we're talking about on Wednesday, but I'm also going to be back next Saturday. And next Saturday, our guest is going to be the ever-lovely Ian Squibbs, who's going to be talking about the latest events at Loch Ness. And so, Mr. McCrinnan, are you going to be watching the show next week, Mr. McCrinnan? Because if you are, and if I'm here doing the live chat and all the other stuff that I always do, then there is no doubt that I shall be seeing you.